Okay, so today we're working on solving quadratic equations by factoring. Sometimes when you see quadratics, you see them as the parabola, where you have either the upside down or the right side up U shape. Just know that to solve is where where it crosses the x-axis. Okay. So sometimes you have them where there are no intercepts, doesn't cross the x-axis at all. Sometimes the parabola where the vertex is right on the x-axis, and so it only has 1, 0. That's where that 1, 0 comes in. Other times it crosses twice across the x-axis, as in this case, where you have 2 zeros. You have 1 here and 1 there. And so then you have 2. So when you have a picture, you can sometimes figure out how many possible solutions you have. To solve the quadratic equation by graphing, we find out what x is when y is equal to 0. And one way you could do that would be to graph it. And if we were to graph it, we can find that where y is 0 is here. And it's also here. So it's crossing at these two places right here and right here. And so I know that x is 1 and x is 5. So because x can either be 1 or x is 5. Okay? Those are two solutions to this quadratic equation. When to use the factoring method, when they don't give you a graph, mostly. It's easily factorable. You can use either the greatest common factor factoring, or you can use the ACB factoring. Don't forget, leave answers as fractions unless the directions state otherwise. And then y must be 0 in order to solve. So get everything on the same side of the equation before factoring. So y needs to be 0. To understand the 0 property, it says for all real numbers a and b, the following is true. If the product of two quantities equals 0, then at least one other quantity it must also equal 0. Because I know if I take 9 times 0, I'm going to get 0. One of them has to be 0. 0 times 4 is equal to 0. So if AB is 0, either A is 0 or B is 0. 0 product property for all real numbers a and b. If AB equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0, which we just did right here. Okay, let's work some of these out. So we have this equation. We have 5x minus 2 times 3x plus 1, and it is equal to 0. Remember, that was the important thing that we had to remember, is that y had to be 0. Now, when I'm working this through, I want to make sure that one of these at least has to be 0 for this to be true statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down this expression, and I'm going to bring this expression down. And then what I'm going to do is find out what this x would need to be for this to be 0. So I'm going to add 2. I'm going to get 5x equals 2. And because I need x by itself, I'm going to divide by 5. X would need to be 2/5 for this to be 0. If this one was the one that was going to be 0, I would subtract 1 from each side. And then I get 3x equals -1. Divide by 3. X would need to equal -1/3. These are my possible solutions for this equation. Let's try that again. So I have 3x times 2x plus 7 equals 0. And I have two terms. I have this term, and then I have this term here. One of them has to be 0. Well, 3 times x equals 0, so x has to be what? 0. And then I have 2x plus 7 equals 0. Subtract 7 from both sides. And divide by 2. So x would need to either be 0 or it would need to be -7/2. A way that you can test it to see if your answer is correct is to replace in the original equation, replace it with x equals -7/2 and see if you get 0. So let's practice this one. We have -12z times 2z plus 5. And I have a -12z, that's one term. My other term is 2z plus 5 equals 0. This will be -12. 0 divided by -12 is 0. That is a z. Then I have 2z plus 5, so subtract 5. Z equals -5/2. So z would have to be either 0 or -5/2. Our next term we have is 2d minus 5 times 3d minus -3d minus, plus 6 equals 0. My two terms. Let's add 5. 2d equals 5. Now I'm going to divide by 2. D equals 5/2. Or, if I subtract 6 here, -3d equals -6. Divide by -3. Or d would equal +2. Homework is 3 through 10 on the last page. There's a bank of answers at the bottom of the page that looks similar to this. And so when you get your answer, then you can cross it off and that'll help you keep track if you'd like. Don't have to use it, but it's there if you'd like. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you. Sorry about that. I just realized that I forgot to show you one where you have to factor them out. We've already worked with them with factoring. Now we're going to factor first. So I have 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 equals 0. Now I can use the greatest common factor, or I can use the ACB method. And I think in this one, I'm going to use the ACB method. Let's see, I have 3x squared, no greatest common factor, so I'm going to break them down. Let's see. So if I take 3 times 4, I get -12. And I know that I can do, and I need to get -11. So if I take 1 and -12 and add them together, I would get -11. So I'm going to use these to spread this out a little bit. So I have 3x squared plus 1x minus 12x minus 4. Now I can break these up into groups. These share an x, so that'd be 3x plus 1, and these share a -4. I would go in 3 times plus 1. I have my common term, 3x plus 1. And then I have my x minus 4. And I know it needs to equal 0. Now, once I have it in this form, now I can solve for 0. So each term, one of them having to be 0. So 3x plus 1 equals 0. And then x minus 4 equals 0. Subtract 1. That would be divided by 3. So x possibly could be negative 1/3. Add 4 on this side. Or x could be positive 4. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.